Good morning, Facebook friends and family. Hope everyone's doing well. Welcome back to the channel. Maybe I should welcome myself back, seeing as I've been kind of AWOL. Yeah, I've been a little bit busy. I gave up truck 744, I rehired a driver, Diane. She used to drive for us, I'm gonna say back in 18. She drove for us for about a year. Anyway, she hit me up about 2 weeks ago saying she was looking for work. She had gone over the road, didn't want to do oil field anymore. It's kind of a common thing. Oil field is starting to get busy again. Um, I'm not going to say work is good, but there is work out there. There's fracking going on. They're trying to get whatever fracking in they can before Biden finds a way to I'm not trying to make this political, but he made promises he was going to ban fracking. And so companies that have already drilled holes, they're trying really hard to get their fracking in before it gets banned. And so it's busy, but the rates are not good. At least not the trucking rates. And a lot of drivers, especially drivers that worked for me before, they've been through, a good year followed by a bad year, followed by an incredible year, and a lot of them are tired of it. It doesn't do you any good to make 150 grand one year and then you got no work the following year. And what happens with them is they go apply for an over-the-road company, but they're starting kind of as a rookie. They get the not favorable routes, they get the older truck, they don't get as good a rate per mile, versus when you've been there for a while, you get more perks. You get the route you want, you get the schedule you want, you end up in a newer truck. And so a lot of these guys are, especially after COVID and there was a shortage of drivers, a lot of these guys are settled into some pretty good deals and they don't want to leave. So add to that, the oil companies are not paying a great rate. A lot of the guys I know that were my competitors, they're running at $75 an hour, and that to me that's not business. And you're required to have way more insurance in the oil field, so it is what it is. Anyways, an old driver of mine, Diane, she came back. I put her on the road. She left a couple days ago, and so she left me without a place to sleep. I'm working on getting a couple other trucks together and get them back out on the road here in the next, hopefully, couple days. I'm prepping a truck that's been parked at the yard for a little over a year. It hasn't worked, and so we're going through it, cleaning it up, addressing maintenance issues, pulling off the oil field tires and putting some highway tires on it, changing a couple things in the programming to make it more highway friendly. And anyway, so I've been kind of busy with that. Did get a little chance to do a little bit of reviewing some markets that I've been asked for lately. I'll try and get a few more of those in. Now that I'm sleeping in a hotel room, I should have more time, I think. But yeah, hopefully before the 4th of July, I'll have at least 2 more trucks on the road. And then right after the 4th of July, maybe a third. And I think after that, I got 2 more that I want to try and revitalize for the highway, and then we'll evaluate what oil field's doing. If it doesn't seem to be doing the right thing, then I might at that point, if it stays busy at that point, the price for tanks should be going up, and I may just start selling some tanks. I've got pretty close to 20 of them sitting, and so if I sell all those off, frankly, I can buy a handful of brand new tractors if I wanted to. But we'll see how that goes. At the beginning of this year, the price for used tanks just wasn't, I wouldn't do it. But I'm starting to get emails and calls. The price seemed to be getting better. We'll see. Anyways, I do notice I have quite a few new subscribers, even though for all intents and purposes, you can say I abandoned my channel here. And so thanks to all the new subscribers. Comment below what kind of stuff you want to see. Someone asked in a comment, that, hey, it looks like you do like 80%, box truck reviews. I do my reviews kind of based on, um, the questions that are asked in the comments, but I also look at the statistics that YouTube makes available, and the number one um, way people find my videos is they're searching for the words Amazon relay box truck. And so I think the majority of my viewers are interested in that. I do know I've got some pretty diehard power only guys. There's a couple people interested in the team stuff. And so, I still try and throw a variety in there, but yes, I did put somewhat of an emphasis on box trucks. It's kind of an emerging market, you could say. Um, in some markets, I think Amazon is starting to take over with their own vans. But you'll notice in the video, I do San Antonio. I've never seen that many box truck loads available in that area. There's quite a few. And so I think in some markets, it's still going to be an up and coming thing. And in other markets, Amazon's starting to lock it down and do it in house. So it's going to be like constantly in flux, I think. Anyway, someone else also commented on one of my videos that they were like a shipping assistant. They handled, they in other words, they worked for Amazon, coordinating freight and whatnot. And they made a comment that, some of my interpretations or analogies were on point. Honestly, if you'd like to reach out and share some thoughts with me, I'd love to ask you questions that could benefit the viewers. Maybe even collaborate a little bit on some information and help the viewers get a better grasp of what's good business for them and how their particular market, may be developing or shrinking. That's kind of the whole purpose of the channel, I think, is to help people. It's not for my ego. I mean, I hardly even haul for Amazon. I think I did one load for them right before Memorial Day weekend. Um, I haven't hauled much for them other than that in the last 6 months. I'm pretty busy over the road with a dispatch service I use. But if you'd be interested in sharing more info, more insight, and help the viewers out, I'd be all ears. I'd be receptive to any kind of advice or information you could lend to the viewers. Anyways, here comes the load board review, and as always, guys, thanks for watching. All right, guys, so jumping into the load board, usually at the top of Amazon's load board, you get these messages. For those of you that don't have access yet to Amazon Relay, these usually sit on top of the load board itself. It's kind of messages they're sending us. And so this week for Prime Week, they're offering a $200 gift card. They're calling it a sweepstake. And so basically when you post a truck, you're being entered into a sweepstake, and every day they're going to give 20 winners a $200 Amazon gift card, and it's every day for the rest of the week. Basically, if you use Post a Truck. For those of you that aren't familiar, Post a Truck, not just with Amazon, but on many load boards, you basically put your information, what you have available, when you're available, and where you're at. And in Amazon's case, they don't send you an offer, they assign you a job. It's kind of how they work. Other load boards, don't typically work that way because it's a broker that you then need to send a carrier packet to, right? In the case of Amazon, you're already a carrier, you're already in good standing. They just assign you the work. And so they're offering a $200 gift card to 20 winners per day for the week. I guess on top of the work, if you get the gift card, that could be an incentive, or you could take the gift card and, I don't know, give it to your kids, wife, whatever. And then the other thing we have right now is we've unlocked early access. We did one load for them right before Memorial Day weekend. I want to say we went from like Kentucky to Dallas or from Kentucky to Houston or something like that. I don't remember. I'm gonna be honest. I don't remember what we did, but it was one of those. We lost a load because a driver got held up by a receiver, and it was right before Memorial Day weekend, and I needed to get my driver home. He had plans. Anyway, and so for today, we are starting in Ontario, and we have it kind of open to all the different truck types. Um, Ontario's kind of where Ontario's close to where I live, and so I tend to go over this one because that's kind of my backyard, if you will. And so the very first one is a power only for 81 miles, pays $600. According to them, you can do it in 2.5 hours. LGB4 is not as bad as LGB8, so it might be possible to do that in about 3 hours. And if that's the case, you're making like $200 an hour, which isn't bad. That's a load that was in it was in early access lock. We do have access short term to early access. Here's one from Carlsbad, California to Moreno Valley, or ONT6. I've never been to that one. I can't speak to it in terms of what they're like. It's a power only, pays almost $300 at $437 a mile. The next one's going from a vendor in Fontana to Salem, Oregon, $4 a mile at $3,800. That's a little on the cheap side. Heading up that way, you should be getting a little bit more. You're going to struggle to get loads coming out of there. Loads coming out of there are just really, really cheap. And so you want to get like $5 a mile, because you're probably going to barely get $2 a mile coming back, and then your average comes out a little bit stronger. Here's a trailer required, heading from San Bernardino to Reno. I'll tell you something about RNO4. You'll probably get there and they'll tell you they canceled your appointment because they're too backed up and they can't unload you. We showed up there a couple times and their response was, we can schedule you in 3 weeks. And they say it's not their fault that loads were booked and they don't have the capacity for it. And so I avoid RNO4. There's another one. It looks like there's a few of them. So what's going to happen is there's a bunch of people that are going to show up over there and they're not going to have the capacity to unload you. So here's another power only. This one's going from LGB6 out to Tucson at just under $3 a mile for $1,300. That is kind of a normal rate going out that way. You can get that rate pretty much on any load board. Here's a Teams trailer required. This one's going from Rialto out to Illinois at $3 a mile. That is pretty cheap. I have a truck en route right now that loaded in Chino. It's heading out to, where's it going? Heading to Wisconsin, and we're getting $9,400. And so that's quite a difference. Granted, it's a few more miles to where we're going. I think we're like 2,200 miles, but our rate per mile is much better than that, and that truck doesn't have to have Teams on it. Here is a trailer required load going from Carson to Phoenix at $443 per mile, $1,600. There's a trailer required going from Carson to Phoenix. I guess that's a duplicate of the other one. There's one going from Corona, California to LGB8, $9 a mile for 28 miles. They say it'll take 3.5 hours. You're going to sit in line at LGB8 for 3 hours. So don't let that one fool you. is LGB8 is like California's FTW1, but FTW1 is much worse. So here's a power only for a team load, LGB5 in San Bernardino, heading out and doubling back to LGB5, 1,200 miles. They say a day and 5 hours for $2,500. Still cheap in my opinion. Here's one going from Redlands, California to ONT5. This one is a trailer required for $249. $249 a mile. So you're gonna get $250 almost per mile to go 1.1 miles. I've never been to ONT5. I've been next door to it, but I don't know what their process is. I don't know how fast they go. There's a box truck load, kind of rare in Southern California, at least on easy to find on a board like this anyways. So this one's going from LGB5 out to Bakersfield, and it is paying $216 a mile. So you get $369 for the load, and they say it'll take you 5 hours. Now keep in mind, you're going to go down the grapevine, and if you can't find a load coming back, you got to climb the grapevine and do that round trip, the return part being out of your own pocket. I know some people are saying they're trying to get, dispatchers to help with the return trips. You really do at that rate. There's no way you can afford to go and come on that price. So here we have a power only teams load, 5,400 miles, leaving ONT5, returning to ONT5, $1.69 a mile for $9,200 in 5 days. There is a trailer provided, in other words, power only, going from LGB3 in Mira Loma, coming back to LGB3 in Mira Loma. This is what most people would call a solo one load. You go and come back in the same day for $713. Here is a teams load. I'm not really sure why they're doing it as a teams load. It's 600 and, well, it's California. It's hard to do 630 miles in one day in California. And I don't think you'll make Utah in 13 hours between loading and unloading. So it's kind of unrealistic. But at $387 a mile, someone will jump on that and not find a load leaving on Salt Lake. So here's a power only 125 mile load. It's a round trip for $267 a mile. In other words, $333 for the trip. Here is another power only 184 miles, $257 a mile for $473. In 8 hours, that's kind of cheap. That's barely over $50 an hour. There's 106 miles, $4 a mile. Same thing, it's a round trip. Here's another round trip, trailer provided, in other words, power only. 177 on the miles for $454. There's another power only, 112 miles, $248 per mile. This one's from Riverside to Riverside. There's another power only round trip. Looks like there's a few of them today. Almost $3 a mile. So they say in 10 hours you'll complete this. So in 10 hours you'll make $543. So you're making like $54 an hour. I haven't sent my trucks back to the oil field, even though oil field's starting to pick up, because they're running at 70 to 75 an hour, and it's just really not a feasible rate. At least not in my opinion. Everybody runs their own ship their own way, right? And so here's a 450-mile trailer required teams load. This one's going from San Bernardino to Reno. I've already shared my opinion there at $3.49 a mile. Here is a San Bernardino to Reno at $2 a mile. This one was in the lock status. It's an early access load. Here is a load from Riverside back to Riverside. It's a round trip, power only, $2.48 a mile. So you'll make $5.91 for the trip. Here is another round trip, trailer provided load, $2.42 per mile, paying out a total of $500 for the day. There's a power only round trip from Chino back to Chino, 1 day, 3 hours. So this one they want teams. They want teams for what would ordinarily be like a solo 2, and it pays $1.48 a mile. So they're going to run you 1,400 miles for $2,100. I guess in some markets that's not bad. Honestly, that rate, like in Florida, wouldn't be so bad. But I think for a California load, that's kind of cheap. And so here's a 71-mile power only. It's a round trip for $3.73. They say you'll do it in 6 hours. Here's another power only round trip, 368 miles for $291. I'm sorry, $191 per mile. Here is a load going from Canoga Park to Fontana. It's a trailer required, 80 miles for $550. Here's another trailer provided, in other words, power only. It's a round trip, 116 miles for $303. These loads are for today, and so you would think they'd be a little bit higher by now. I wonder what they were. Wonder what they were yesterday. So here's a 100 miles, power only. It's a round trip for $296. There's a team load, 2,400 miles at $2.60 a mile. It's going to Florida. That's really cheap going into Florida, considering it's a struggle to get out. There's a 27-mile load, trailer required, for $406, $14 a mile. That's going to ONT 8, and so you'll sit there a while trying to get unloaded. Here's a Teams round trip load at $1.54 for just under 5,000 miles in 5 days. So here is 751 miles. It's basically what you would call a solo 2. So it's a single driver, power only, out and back the next day. $2.18 a mile for $16.39 on the total there. There's 180 miles for a power only round trip out of Moreno Valley for $2.58 a mile, or $4.60 on the total there. Not a whole lot of box truck out of this area. So here we have 218 on the miles, power only. It's a round trip at $2.64 per mile. There is a Teams load heading from San Bernardino out to Jordan, Utah 387. It's a trailer required for a team. And so that's what our Southern California market looks like. Try not to get the video too long, so let me jump into another market and show some of the other stuff I've been getting asked for. I know I've had a few people ask about the Miami area. There's only 12 results. I believe Miami looks as dry as it does because a lot of your locals already have work assigned to them, and the people that don't do the whole post-a-truck thing, and so we don't see much on the load board. I could be completely wrong there, but I know there's more activity there than what we see on the board here. Anyway, and so here we have a power only load, 141 on the miles. It is a one-way for 383 or 270 per mile. Here we have a trailer provided 341 miles at 195 per mile. This one's heading to Jacksonville, Florida. Now we have 141 miles heading from Naples up to Ruskin. Hopefully I pronounced that one right. At 270 per mile. That's actually not a bad, it's not a bad rate for a power only. I'm always saying Florida's market's really cheap. There's 141, looks like it's the same trip, power only. Here is a 236, same thing. Actually, I think this one's out of Miami, so it's a little different. And it's an early access load at 234 per mile. But this one duplicates it. It's another early access, power only, 236 miles. And then there's another one, so they got a handful of them doing the same thing. There's yet another one. Here's a round trip, 180 miles, power only, paying 278 per mile. 278 per mile isn't as bad as I thought a lot of the Florida work was. So here's a 689 mile load. This is a trailer required out of Boca Raton, heading out to Charlotte. I will warn that CLT2 is as bad as FTW1, and it's paying $1.44 a mile for almost 700 miles. I wouldn't go back to that location personally. So here's 1177 on the miles. This one is a trailer required, heading out to Imperial, Pennsylvania from Florida, $1.47 a mile. This one isn't till Thursday, so I would assume between here and then it would go up. And these are actually outside of the area. That was what's in the Miami. Someone asked me about Hagerstown. Don't remember who it was at the moment. There's quite a few loads at 187. So here we have a trailer required heading from Belcamp out to Hazleton, Pennsylvania, 520 on the miles. Per mile, that's not bad. If you could really pull this off in 4 hours and get almost $1,000. Don't know what the PA market is like for Amazon. So here we have 94 miles at 296. This is a power only, heading out of Maryland. Oh, it's heading to Hagerstown. Here we have 272 on the miles. This one is a trailer required, heading to Sparrows Point. Here we have a trailer provided round trip, $280 per mile for $275 total miles. Here we have 204 power only out of Carlisle, Pennsylvania back to Carlisle, Pennsylvania, $241 per mile. Here's a load round trip power only out of Baltimore, paying $274 per mile. So in a day you'll make just under $1,000. That's not too bad for power only. Here you have 151 on the miles. So power only, round trip, paying almost $3 a mile. There is a power only for teams, paying $210 per mile for $460. Not really sure why they're requesting teams there. Maybe they anticipate they're going to hold you up. I don't know. Is this the same thing? Yep. So here we have 380 miles, power only. This one's a round trip out of Clearbrook, Virginia, $248 per mile. This one's pretty much the same thing, it looks like. There's a teams load, power only, 58, almost 5,900 miles at $1.77. I think the way they keep people interested in these is, you're going to make $10,000 in almost 6 days. And I think that's where people jump on board on those, and they think to themselves, well, the trailers are going to be really light, and so it's almost like you're running empty, but you're running the crud out of your truck. I'd rather run heavier and be well compensated per mile. But that's me. Everybody's got their own way to skin that cat, right? So 204 miles, power only, out of Carlisle. It's a round trip, pays $183 per mile. Here we have another team load, trailer required. They say it's 11 hours for $552. Why they want teams, I'm not sure. Pays $204 a mile. $1,100 is what that job pays. Here we have 263 miles, power only. This one's a one-way from Virginia to Jersey. $323 per mile. That's not too shabby, I suppose. 244 miles, power only, paying almost $3 a mile for a total of $726. And this one is a round trip out of Clearbrook, Virginia. Here's an early access load that was unlocked. Looks to be a round trip, power only, 388 miles, paying $257 for a total of $996 for the day. There's 407 miles. That one's a power only, one way. An early access load for $376. That's actually not bad paid for the mile. Here's a power only round trip out of Baltimore, Maryland, and it's at $287 per mile for 173 miles. Here's a Baltimore, Maryland power only round trip, paying $324 per mile for 222 miles. Here's a box truck load, the first one we've seen here, 148 on the miles. This one's going from Carlisle to Burlington, New Jersey. This is $237 per mile. Here's a load. This one is a power only out of Clearbrook, Virginia, heading to Concord, North Carolina, $217 per mile, paying a total of $766. Here is a power only 204 on the mileage, 288 per mile. There is a team load for a power only going one way. Where is that going? It's going to Massachusetts. All right, so here's 170 miles. This is a power only heading out of Maryland out to Essex, Maryland, 373 per mile. Here's a round trip out of Baltimore, power only. It's a total of just under 300 miles. Pays $295 per mile. Keep in mind, guys, when on some of these East Coast jobs, remember, if you guys got tolls out there, that rate includes, they're compensating you for those tolls, and so your base rate might be a little bit cheaper. Here's another box truck out of Pennsylvania, heading out to Maryland, $319 per mile. It's a total of 89 miles. It's not too bad a rate, actually. I know I criticized the box truck rates. So here is a 630 mile power only load from Baltimore to Baltimore, but you'll notice it's two different locations, so you're going to start at one, end at the other. That's something they started doing recently on their round trips. They're not always bringing you back to the same facility. This one pays $157 on the mileage, which I think is kind of cheap. There's another box truck load, 16 miles, $13 a mile, out of Baltimore going to Nottingham. You know, for 3 hours work on a box truck, that's not bad. Your deadhead won't be bad. If you could get a couple of those in a day, or a few of them, that would be business right there. So here's a 1,000-mile load for a power only. It's a round trip. Basically, it's almost like what you would consider a solo two, but it's a team's load at $1.91 per mile. Here we have 281 miles out of Pennsylvania heading to Lancaster, New York, almost $3 a mile. So the payout is $8.29. 237 miles out of Baltimore back to Baltimore. It's a power only round trip, almost $3 a mile. So the day will pay you out at $705. Here we have a power only teams load. This one's a one-way out of Baltimore heading out to Pennsylvania at $215 per mile. That's actually decently paid for an Amazon Teams load. Here we have 307 miles. This is a power only out of Maryland heading to Windsor, Connecticut, $336 per mile. But saying it's going to take 20 hours to do the load. Oh, it's got multi-drops, sorry. So yeah, it's a one-way, but it's got multi-drops. Not really sure how they think you're going to do that in 20 hours. Because after your 11th hour, you couldn't run anymore anyways. That one may be a mistake. So here you have 115 miles. This one is a power-only round trip from Baltimore back to Baltimore at almost $4 a mile. But it's not a whole lot of miles, so that seems to me like they're gonna have you parked somewhere for a long time, sitting in line probably. And so here is a 454-mile power-only trip from Baltimore to Charlotte, 287 on the miles. Here's a 2,800-mile power-only team load heading from Baltimore to Newark, California, 155 per mile. That's really cheap. going pretty much cross country. There's 77 miles, power only. It's a round trip, Baltimore back to Baltimore at $4.13 per mile. There's a 799 mile trailer required load going from Hagerstown, Maryland to Tampa, Florida. $2.30 per mile, so the load pays $2,200. And for some reason this one looks like it's skewed a little bit, but it's a power only load. 423 miles out of Pennsylvania back to Pennsylvania. It's actually a round trip. 263 per mile on that power only. There's a 146 mile power only load from Baltimore back to Baltimore at $288 per mile. There's a 115 mile power only Baltimore to Baltimore at almost $4 a mile. There is a 238 mile power only load. This one's an early access load, round trip, Sparrows Point, Maryland, at $357 per mile. That ends up being not a bad rate if you actually make it fit the schedule. Anyway, we're into Wednesday now, so let's jump on to something else. Okay, and so the next market is San Antonio. I've had a couple people ask me about that. I get a lot of inquiries San Antonio for box trucks, and I'm going to be honest, I don't normally see box trucks there. I've had a handful of people tell me that even though I'm saying I don't see box trucks, there's still some there. And you know, I can't say win, lose, or draw that there's market someplace when my load board doesn't show it. I guess that's what it kind of boils down to. But today there's quite a few loads, and so I don't know if the market is growing out there or if these are just loads that haven't been booked yet. Anyway, and so I'll open it up and show the rest, but San Antonio is a market that, like on 3 other reviews, I didn't find anything, and today there happens to be quite a few. So we'll kind of go down them. This first one is kind of a long haul. It's a box truck load going from San Antonio out to Antioch, Tennessee. 966 miles at $1.35 a mile. That just seems awfully cheap to me. You guys running box trucks, you know, can someone post in the comments, what are you guys averaging fuel mileage wise with the box truck? When I had my equipment rental business, I ran a couple F650s, which is the same basic chassis as a non-CDL box truck, but I didn't have this big old box on board. And I think 8 to 9 miles to the gallon was kind of the norm. Now I get the fact my truck was like a 2000 year model and technology may have improved things, but what are you guys getting fuel efficiency wise? Those of you guys that are doing box truck work already, it just seems to me like that rate is really, really low for how long that haul is. So okay, the next one is San Antonio. This is a 166 mile load at $267 per mile. There's another one going to Arkansas, Texas. Never heard of that before. $215 per mile. There's another load out of Cale, Texas. 233 miles at $203 per mile. There's a San Antonio load going out 163 miles for $221 per mile. There's another San Antonio load 128 miles at 246 per mile. There's another kale load, 207 miles. This is 182 per mile. There's another kale Texas load, 223 miles at $1.64 per mile. Here is another San Antonio load, 141 miles, $1.92 per mile. There's another San Antonio load for 141 miles at $2.10 per mile. There's a load leaving Kyle, Texas for 239 miles at $1.40 per mile. Another Kale, Texas load, 196 miles for $1.61. There's another one, 192 for $1.66. I'm going to assume that might be a new location because I never saw loads out of there before. There's 187 miles for $1.62. There's another load at 239 miles for $1.40. Now granted, these are now out into Friday and Saturday, and so maybe hopefully as they get closer the rate goes up. So there is a handful of box truck loads there. Let's switch it back to everything. So that people can see what else is there. So there's a power only load, 219 miles at 305 heading to Dallas. There's another load going to Dallas, another one going to Dallas, and of course they're going to FTW1, so just be aware you'll be sitting there for a while. This one's at least going to DAL3, which I believe is not as bad. Same price though at 305. FTW1 for 308. FW7 at 308. FW7 at 308. DAL3 at 305. This one's actually out of San Marcos going to Kansas. It's a Teams load, power only for $3 a mile. This one's a round trip, power only at 281. Here's a load going from Schertz, Texas out to Phoenix at 177. Another power only heading out to Tucson at 180. Another load going to Tucson at 180, power only. Another load to Phoenix at 177 for power only. A load for 165 a mile heading out to Phoenix, power only. Another Phoenix load, power only for 165. Another load out to Phoenix for 165. 165 Phoenix. Tucson for 180. Goodyear for 178. These are all power only. Phoenix for 177. Phoenix for 165. Goodyear for 178. Phoenix for 177. Tucson 182. Phoenix 165. Phoenix for 165. Phoenix 165. 180 to Tucson. Tucson for 182. 135 heading out to, that's that box truck load we talked about. Tucson for 180. A load going to Irving, Texas for 218 a mile. Yeah, San Antonio market's got more loads, but holy cow is it cheap. Tucson for 180. There's a load going to Dallas, 305 a mile. Another Dallas for 305. Another Dallas for 313. That one is actually a trailer required. That's going from a vendor. This one's actually a round trip team, 5,800 miles for $1.49. There is Aurora, Colorado, a team power only for 306. There is a power only out to Goodyear for 144. Power only out to Phoenix for 144. Phoenix for 144. Goodyear 144. Tucson 145.